Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I'm your co-host Pablo, and here's my co-host.
Leo.
So, on this week's episode, we are going to discuss starts/sits for Week 11 of this season. Can't believe it's already Week 11. So, getting closer and closer to fantasy playoffs. Hopefully, for our listeners, you're doing good. Or you still have a shot at playoffs. Hopefully none of you have been eliminated. Because in my league, had already two teams be eliminated. So hopefully it's none of you. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. So we're going to start off with quarterbacks. The first quarterback that I would start this week, I think I mentioned him last week. He had a really great game last week, even though his team lost, and that's going to be Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have been lining up the scoreboard um, as of late. This last week, he had 5 touchdowns against the Ravens, and this week he is facing the Chargers, who have been doing really well these last 2 weeks. But 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, so 9 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. I expect him to continue to do well, maybe not that same amount. Um, but again, he has been on fire, so I'm going to continue to have him as my start until he doesn't have more than 3 touchdowns. So that's my first QB. Who's yours, Leo?
My first QB to start this week is actually going to be Bo Nix. He's been on another quarterback, probably other than Jaden Daniels, probably the second best quarterback, rookie quarterback this season. Um, so like this past week, he played at Kansas City, and he was able to throw for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is the case. He does have a decent defense, and this week he's going up against Atlanta, which they excuse me, they allow the seventh most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So I see him having an excellent game this week with Cortland Sutton and the other weapons that he has there. And you could also make plays on it with his legs as well. So
Yeah, man. Knicks has been really, really surprising to me. Um, that he would do as well. As like Jaden Daniels and some of these other rookie QBs. So, um, you know, just really surprising. So yeah, I like that. My next QB to start. Um, I'm hoping he has a great game this week. He's getting his number one receiver back, Nico Collins, and they're facing Dallas, who last 3 games, 30 points, 27 points, 34 points. So if that trend continues, so averaging around 30 points a game, giving up these last 3 games. I hope that trend continues this week, prime time. So that's my next QB to start. Who is yours?
my second QB to start this week is actually going to be Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson. He's going up against Baltimore, who just got lit up like a Christmas tree with by Burrow and Jamar Chase. Um, he's facing the Baltimore Ravens, who are allowing the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, and Russell has been pretty phenomenal since taking over for quarterback for the Steelers. He should continue this week. This game might not be uh, a shootout because the Pittsburgh does have a good defense, but they should he should be able to have plenty of opportunity to throw against them. So I look for him to continue out of the two of the 3 games that he's played, he's had over 25 fantasy points, and and this is like the best matchup that he's going to be facing. With the Baltimore's great against the run defense, but their pass defense has been very suspect this year. And like I said, they just got lit up by Burrow and Jamar Chase. So I think he'll have another good. Russell Wilson will have an opportunity to him and Pickens to connect. Mike Williams also is in town, so new in town with Pat Freiermuth. So he does have some weapons to make it happen.
All right. I like that. I think with the rivalry games, especially tough, and something that I didn't know, this might affect. Well, you know what? I will go ahead and do a Hail Mary on my sit for QB, considering he's the number one fantasy QB this year, and that's actually going to be Lamar Jackson to sit. So Lamar Jackson in his career against the Steelers, he is 1-4. So his stats when he faces the Steelers, I'm just gonna highlight them, which I was really surprised. He has 4 total touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 5 fumbles, a 59 completion percentage, a 66 passer rating, and he has been sacked 20 times. And that is in his career. 4 total touchdowns. So, for that reason, again, I said I'm going to do a Hail Mary, and Lamar Jackson is going to be quarterback to sit, even though he's the number one fantasy quarterback. Who is your quarterback to sit?
All right, so my first quarterback to sit is going to be Kirk Cousins. He's had a good as the year has progressed, so has the Falcons offense. But this week they're facing the Denver defense, which is allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. They've only allowed one quarterback to really go off on them for like 29 fantasy points was Lamar Jackson. But everyone else, Patrick Mahomes, he had 18 points. Bryce Young, 19. Bryce Young was a joke. He had actually had 19. Justin Herbert, 15. Aaron Rodgers, 11. Baker Mayfield, that he's been one of the hottest. They even held him to 11 points. So that their defense speaks for itself. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to be a sit for me this week. If you got him, you might want to look elsewhere.
It's a trend this week. There's a lot of analysts. I think it was the CBS fantasy people that were saying Cousins is a sit against the Broncos. So I'm not surprised there. My next sit this week is going to be the Cowboys quarterback in Cooper Rush. Last week, the Texans against the high-powered Lions offense, even though they still lost, managed 5 interceptions against Jared Goff. I think that defense really brought it last week, and I think it's going to be the same. Maybe that primetime energy got to them. So for that reason, 5 turnovers was the franchise record last week, and they played Cooper Rush. And the Cowboys and that offense has last week only managed 6 points against the Eagles, and that they were at home. So let's see that trend continuing. Who's your last quarterback to sit?
My second quarterback to sit this week is the the quarterback they brought back from the resurrected, which is Anthony Richardson. He's had a rough year, his second year. He started off with a bang in his first week, but ever since then, he got benched for Joe Flacco, and now he's back. But they're gonna give him he's gonna start for the rest of the season. The thing is that his first game back is gonna be against the Jets, which is a tough assignment for his first week, as the Jets only are allowing the fifth fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. So that's someone to look at, to bench, how, this is his first game back, see how he gets acclimated back into the offense, and, go from there. Hopefully he can produce, but we'll see.
I didn't think that they would go back to Anthony Richardson. I thought they would allow him to sit behind Flacco, but I guess the Colts thought otherwise. So hopefully he'll be able to do well. But I agree, the Jets is not an easy defense for your first game back. So moving on to running backs. The running back that I would start this week is going to be Devon Achane against the Raiders. So even though last week he did not have that good of a game this past week, this week, I think it's going to be a different story. So the last two games for the Raiders, they gave up 27 points against Kansas City and 41 against the Bengals. They were on a bye, but given those 2 point totals, I think it should be different. And the defense has given up 130 rushing yards per game. So I think it's going to be a really good matchup for Achane. What about you, Leo?
All right, so my first running back to start this week is going to be Kareem Hunt. He's going up against Buffalo, who's allowing the second most fantasy points this season. You might, like I said, you want to get him in to your lineups this week, because after this week, it's going to become murky for him, because Pacheco, I guess Pacheco's coming back, and next week. So he was close to coming back this week, but since he's out, it makes Kareem Hunt a must start this week. He's been very solid for those that were able to pick him up. Producing as an RB2, RB2. So that should at least continue this week. So definitely, if you have them, roll them out there, because the Bills have been rolled on by everybody, which is surprising. They got their pass defense is good, but they've been torched a little bit. So I will throw out Kareem on out there. They Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I
Sorry.
don't know if Will's has a mute.
That's right.
My next running back to start is going to be the RB1 over the last 5 weeks. He's been RB1 for 5 consecutive weeks. And that's Bijan Robinson. So I think regardless of the matchup, he's been on the tear. Even though that Denver's defense is not the greatest matchup. against for running backs. But again, because he's been the number one at running back, and he's still getting 100 or more yards these last five games. He's a must start. So that is my second running back to start. What about you?
My second one to start this week is gonna be Ramondre Stevenson. He's been doing pretty well for the last like two of the last three games. He's had over 20 fantasy points in a couple of the games versus a tough Jets defense and also against a tough Tennessee defense. This week, he faces the Rams, who are middle of the pack as well. The Patriots are going to want to control the ball, and they should probably look to getting Stevenson heavily involved this week.
All right. Now, moving on to running backs to sit. Actually, going to go with Jonathan Taylor of the Colts. He's facing the Jets this week. And like Leo was talking, Anthony Richardson is back. So not sure how that's going to be for his first game back. And it's a Jets defense that again it's better against the run. It's not like extremely well. They do give up the ninth most rushing yards, but with Anthony Richardson back at the home and just with that tough front seven, I would say John right there. Assuming that you have a better option. But you Leo.
All right. My first running back to sit this week is actually going to be Tony Pollard. He's been doing pretty well, with Tyjae Spears out of the picture with dealing with an injury. He did come back last week, but this week he's going up against the Minnesota Vikings run defense that they allow the fourth fewest fantasy points to running backs so far this season. Over their last 3 or 4 games, they've held Jonathan Taylor to 8.9 points, Travis Etienne to 5.30 points, even David Montgomery 8 points, and Breece Hall they held him to 6.70 points. So they've been pretty solid against the run, and so he's gonna be keep your expectations tempered because he might have a tough game this week.
All right. My second running back to sit, he has a tough matchup against the 49ers, who are the 8th best team in the league against the run. That's Kenneth Walker of the Seahawks. Even though they are coming off a bye, I'd still sit Walker because of this tough matchup. Who's your last running back to sit?
Hang on 1 second. My second running back to sit is gonna be easily Javonte Williams. He's been starting most of the year, but now looks like even starting as last week, Audric Estemi started taking over as a running back in Denver, and I see Javonte Williams, being second fiddle to him. So if you have him, I would bench him. If because I think that this trend's gonna continue with Audric Estemi taking the lead role with Denver going forward for the rest of the season.
Hope so, man, because I picked him up on waivers.
Nice.
Hopefully, good trend. Moving on to wide receivers. The first receiver that I would start this week. So first receiver that I would start is going to be Tyreek Hill of the Dolphins, who's facing the Raiders defense that's allowed 15 touchdown passes in 9 games. And he got back on the right track last week, getting that 1 yard touchdown catch. Dolphins were able to pull off that win, so I think at home, trying to make that playoff push is going to be really important for him to have a good game, so that is the first receiver that I would start.
My first receiver to start this week is gonna be Calvin Ridley. Last week, now that Mr. Hopkins is in greener pastures in Kansas City, Calvin Ridley became the unquestioned wide receiver one in the Titans offense, and he blew up with Levis now back in the under center. He rocked 25 fantasy points. He was only projected to do 10, and he came through for fantasy managers last week. He was targeted 9 times, brought in 5 receptions for 84 yards and a couple of touchdowns. This week, he has another nice matchup going up against the Vikings. Even though the Vikings are really tough on the ground, they're vulnerable in the secondary. They're allowed the third most fantasy points to receivers this season, and they're gonna definitely have to throw to try to keep up with the Vikings. So there isn't he's gonna get I'm sure he's gonna get a lot of targets, and he should be able to do at least low end wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 3 numbers this week for you if you start him.
Okay. My next receiver to start is going to be Garrett Wilson of the Jets, facing the Colts, who allow 254 passing yards per game. They have the 7th most catches of 20 plus yards. So I think if the Jets have any chance of making wild card, they're just gonna have to go on a hot streak. And it's going to take that offense and Garrett Wilson to be able to manage that. So I think there's a really good matchup this week. Who is your next receiver to start?
My next receiver to start, I'm gonna roll with a hot hand, and that's Cedric Tillman. Ever since Jameis Winston has become the quarterback for the Browns, Tillman has come alive. The second-year receiver. He's gone against Cincinnati. His first game, he had over 18 points. Against Baltimore, he had over 28 points, and then prior to last week's bye, he had 19 points against a tough Chargers defense. This week they're going up against the Saints, who allow the 10th most fantasy points to receivers this year, and Jameis Winston is technically could be a revenge game since he did play for the Saints a couple years back. So I look for Tillman to continue his hot hand and probably hover around 15 fantasy points this week.
Now wide receiver to sit. Wide receiver to sit. One. So the wide receiver that I would sit this week is going to be Zay Flowers of the Ravens, especially in that tough um, matchup against the Steelers, and they're essentially in the middle of the pack as far as their secondary um, against the pass. But I just think because of that record that Lamar has, those stats that I was saying, um, I just think it's going to be a low scoring game in that affair. So for that reason, I would sit Zay Flowers. Who would you sit?
One receiver that you might want to contemplate benching. You might, I know more than likely you're gonna start him, um, but because you have to. But uh, it's DK Metcalf. He is coming back from a knee injury that's held him out for the last 3 weeks. They did have a bye last week, so he had that extra week to get rested. But this is going to be his first game back after that knee injury, and he's going up against the San Francisco defense that always seemed to play him well. They did play earlier this season in week 6, and the 49ers held him to 7.80 fantasy points. He was targeted 11 times, and he only came up with 11. I'm sorry, 11 times, and he only came in with 3 receptions for 48 yards. So I could see that. I could see that could continue this week. They're like I said, that first game was in Seattle, and now they're going to San Francisco on the road. So with his first game back, so you might want to temper those expectations if you have to start him. Maybe put him as a flex, but as a top 24 receiver, he might have a hard time making it this week.
All right. This next receiver, uh, did mention him last week. I'm going to mention him again. That is because um, this team has been averaging 9 points per game in this last 3 games, and that is the Chicago Bears. So last week I mentioned to sit DJ Moore. It's going to be another sit, especially if Green Bay goes out to a lead and they're just running the ball. I don't know if the Bears offense is going to be able to match that offensive firepower. And again, nine points, averaging 9 points per game these last 3 weeks. Did not know it was that bad. So I would sit DJ Moore. And to further add to that, let's see what his stat line was last week. Last week, 6 targets, 3 catches, 24 yards. The week before that, 4 catches, 9 targets, 33 yards, and the one before that, 4 targets, 2 catches, 27 yards. So less than 10 fantasy points these last week. Who's your next receiver, Jason?
My next one to sit, the easy answer is is Jalen Waddle. He's been non-existent for since week 1, so That's a quick one. But another one to think about sitting is gonna be Brian Thomas Jr. After a hot start, he's kind of cooled off a little bit over his last few games. He's been what hurts him is that he doesn't have Trevor Lawrence under center. So without him, his game has taken a dump on itself. So um, he's someone definitely to consider benching this week. Like I said, it's been tough to trust him without Trevor Lawrence. So uh, that's my another set.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because that was going to be mine. It's like a little different route. But yeah, I agree. Losing Lawrence has not helped him. So, all right. Moving on to tight ends. So, first, tight end that I would start. Um, I think he, he's been really good these last 2 weeks. Well, good paths for a tight end. Um, um, that is going to be Mike Gesicki of the Bengals. Um, I think because that offense has been doing really well and need of points from the tight end position. I think you can't go wrong with him. He was targeted 9 times last week. I think the Ravens caught for 30 yards. Even though I was not too happy that the other tight end was eating up some of those targets. I think again just because the offense has been on fire the last few weeks. It's a good tight end to start. What about
Um, this this tight end is someone that he was a no-brainer at the start of the season, but then he became he fell into the abyss after the first 5 weeks. But since week 6, he's come back to life, and that's gonna be Mark Andrews. Since then, he's had 15 fantasy points against Washington. Against the Buccaneers, he had 20 fantasy points against a tough Browns defense. He had 14. He kind of was held back against Denver, but Denver's defense is ridiculous. And then last week against Cincinnati, he was targeted 7 times, brought in 6 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. So looks like he's come back alive. As one of Lamar Jackson's go-to receivers, and definitely roll him back out there. Don't be afraid. He should be a start for the rest of the season.
okay? The next the very good start. Going to be Joku. So kind of like Leo was mentioning, might be a revenge game. And New Orleans defense is in the middle of the pack against tight ends. So I know it's Watson's security blanket. So I guess a good start this week. What about you, Leo? What's your last one?
So this guy he was probably one of the hottest pickups this week, especially if you have Dalton Kincaid, and that's his teammate Dawson Knox. Kincaid's already been ruled out for the week, and this week they're going up against Kansas City, who's allowing the second most fantasy points to tight ends this year, and the you could I see definitely Josh Allen looking his way, throwing the ball to him. and he should come through for you guys if you're in desperate need of a tight end. Last week, when he came in after Kincaid got a little injured, he got targeted 3 times, brought in 2 receptions for 40 yards. So look for that continue without Kincaid. So definitely, if he's there available, I would try to pick him up too if you're desperate. If you have your tight end on a bye, um, someone to definitely consider picking up.
Okay. Now, in the same conversation that Leo was talking about with Brian Robinson, I'm going to go to his teammate and Evan Ingram to sit this week. Not having Trevor Lawrence is really affecting not only Robinson but Evan Ingram as well. So for that reason, I would sit Ingram. The Lions defense has allowed the second fewest yards to tight ends. Another reason. Your first.
Who was the tight end you said? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Evan Ingram.
Evan. Okay, got it. Thanks. Sorry, I couldn't hear it. All right.
No,
Oh yeah. So my first tight end to sit, and you might want to sit him probably for the for the foreseeable future, and that's Jake Ferguson. Um, he was hot with Dak Prescott, but now with Cooper Rush behind under center, he's disappeared, just like the rest of the Cowboys offense. So last week he got shut down by the Eagles, only scoring 4.40 points, and this week he's going up against the Texans, who allow the fewest fantasy points to tight ends this year. So if you have Jake Ferguson, look the other way, because he ain't gonna do much this week.
all right. So the next tight end that I would fit is um, Pat Fryermuth, the Steelers. So might sound like a broken record, but I just think that these rivalry games are really tough. Um, even though the Ravens secondary has given up a lot of points to receivers, they're middle of the pack when it comes to tight ends. So that is the wide receiver, the last tight end that I would sit. What about you, Leo?
And my second tight end to sit is Dalton Schultz. Um, he's had opportunities over the last month to produce with Nico Collins out of the lineup, and now and he didn't do much. He never even scored double digits in any of his games over this year, actually. So I would definitely sit him. He has, like I said, he's been very uh, mediocre at best. He's been non-existent. I I wouldn't even roster the guy, to be honest with you. I'd be very desperate to even roster him, but sometimes you're in deep leagues and you have to do what you have to do. But I would definitely try to look to look elsewhere and bench Dalton Schultz this week.
All right, I agree with that, especially with Nico coming back. I actually think that hopefully that opens up more for Tank Hill. So moving on to defense. First defense that I would start. Leo kind of touched on it earlier. It's going to be the Vikings. We have a favorable matchup in the Titans. Although at least the passing game has had a little bit of a resurgence, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for that Vikings defense that's been tough this whole year. So that's the first defense I would start. What about you?
The first defense I'm going to start is my hometown team, and that's the Miami Dolphins. They got Vegas coming to town. That they love giving points to opposing defenses. They allow the most fantasy points to opposing defenses. They've allowed six teams to score in double digits fantasy points so far this season. Six out of 9 games, which is a pretty good percentage if you ask me. The other couple of games, they scored 8 points. Baltimore scored 7 points, and then the Carolina was the worst there at 5. So um, they've been with Minshew back in there. He's a gunslinger. I can see him throwing a few picks, maybe a pick six. He's gonna probably get sacked. So definitely, I see the Dolphins capitalizing on the Raiders' offense for sure.
All right. My next defense I would start is going to be the Broncos. Since we're talking about Cousins being a sit, they only allowed 16 points against the Chiefs last week in that nail biter of a game. So I think at home this week they're going to continue that trend. So I would start the Broncos. Who would you start?
Well, this time I'm gonna go with your home team, and I'm gonna go with the Texans. They have a big game Monday night against the Cowboys, who have a Cooper Rush at quarterback. I can honestly see Cooper Rush not lasting too long, and if I were the Cowboys, I will see what Trey Lance has. Throw him out there for the rest of the season, see what he has. You know, you can run. Uh, yeah, see what you got. Like, they have nothing to lose. I don't know how Mike McCarthy still has a job. He must have some naked pictures of Jerry Jones or something. But I don't know. But yeah, definitely, I think definitely Texans should be a nice defense to stream this week. Um, as the Cowboys are have been really generous and allowing the eighth most fantasy points to opposing defenses this year.
All right, I like that. Now moving on to defenses that we would sit. Um, Kind of talked about it earlier, even though they've been doing really well these last 2 weeks. I think this week I would sit the Chargers. Again, 9 touchdowns in these last 2 games for the Bengals. So for that reason, I would sit the Chargers.
Of course you were. Of course you took. Doesn't go one episode you don't take one of my guys. Nah, that's fine. Yeah, no, definitely. Cincinnati's been on fire, so they might light them up too. Um, so my first defense to sit this week is the Buffalo Bills. They've been pretty hot lately, but this week they're going up against Kansas City. Which those games always tend to be high scoring, and I see another high score this week. So if you have Buffalo, try to look somewhere else this week because they might get lit up.
All right. Um, and the next defense that I would say is going to be Cowboys, who I was talking about earlier. Um, I think that they do not have a good matchup in the Texans this week, especially since that run defense has been giving up a lot of rushing yards to premier running backs. And I think Joe Mixon has had a really good year this year, even though he missed some time. And then with Collins coming back, so I would say the Cowboys defense. And who's your last set?
So I'm gonna make my life easy this week. You know, and I'm gonna pick in that same game. I'm gonna bench Kansas City defense too. They're 79% roster, so they're pretty well rostered. So they're facing the Bills, who are allowing the third fewest fantasy points to the opposing defenses. No, not one single opposing defense has scored double-digit points against them this year, and that should continue this week. There's only been two teams that had 9, and that was the Baltimore and Arizona. Other than that, everyone it's been 6 or fewer points. So doesn't the odds are not in their favor for Kansas City this week. So I would bench them this week.
All right, I like that. So that wraps up our start slash sits for week 11. Thank you, everyone who listens. Thank you for tuning in. You can give us a follow, share it with your friends, family. Really, really helps us grow as a podcast. If you have any questions, you can reach me on X, which is at ArchReaper, ARCHREAPR. Or we can reach you, Leo.
Yeah, if you have any fantasy questions, reach me as well on X at smooth1074. Um, the if hopefully you find this helpful. If you like the show, like Paulo said, follow, subscribe, tell a friend, share on social media, help us out, leave a comment. We appreciate all your efforts on that. Trying to get out there to help others. Good luck this week, and go get them.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace.